You're listening
to the CD Baby DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 94 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner, your host for the show, and this week you're going to hear from Martin Atkins. Martin is a longtime musician turned author who recently penned a book called Tour Smart and Break the Band that goes in depth into all the strategies and information you need in order to go out on the road and have a productive touring experience. You might be thinking, how hard is touring? You jump in a van and go. Well, Martin has a lot to say on the topic, and if you want to use touring to move your music career forward, you'll definitely want to make sure you are touring smart. Well, before we get to the interview, I did want to warn you that there is some colorful language in this episode. So if you're listening with your kids in the car, which I know some of you do, I just wanted to give you a little warning and a heads up that you might want to preview this episode first. Well, let's get to my interview with Martin Atkins. Well, joining me on the phone is musician and author Martin Atkins. Martin, how you doing?
I'm pretty good, thanks, Kevin. Pretty good.
Well, why don't you start us off with a little bit about your background in music and then what led up to you writing a book called Tour Smart?
Well, okay. Well, I spent all my life, making music and being in bands and touring and doing stuff. Started playing drums when I was 9, joined my first band when I was 11 or 12, backing strippers, drinking Newcastle Brown Ale, all of that stuff. I joined Public Image Ltd when I think I was 19. Mm-hmm. Spent 5 years with PIL. We toured America, Australia, Japan. Met Dick Clark, did all that stuff. But went straight from, after Pill I had a kind of a year-long hiatus where I was just sick of music. Then I joined Killing Joke, spent a couple of years working with Killing Joke, drumming, co-writing, co-producing, and managing the band. And while I was in Killing Joke, I did a tour with Ministry, the Cage Tour in 91. That was pretty cool. Like the best 6 months to be involved with Ministry ever. Worked with 9 Inch Nails on the Head Like a Whole video and the track Wish. Started my own band Pigface, which has over 300 members. I have my own record label called Invisible, which is 21 years old. We've released about 350 albums. I have my own recording studio. I put package tours together with 4 or 5 different bands and handle all of the logistics and promotion for that. I started teaching by accident 6 years ago when I went to Columbia College Chicago to get some interns. They asked me to teach. They were using a book written in 1962 about touring. And I'm like, well, this is kind of crap. So I started to put my own classes together, which led to a pretty decent touring textbook. But although I could have been finished fairly quickly with that, but it didn't feel to me as if it had any of the poetry, the stress, the drama of touring. So I persuaded, cajoled, or in the case of Henry Rollins, blackmailed other people to contribute to the book. So there's Jason Pettigrew from Alternative Press, Susan Ferris, there's managers, agents, club owners, bookers, people in bands, journalists, sound people, crew people. There's all kinds of other people in there throwing in their 10 cents worth. So since I finished the book, I've been touring around the world, talking to people about touring, entrepreneurial activity, marketing, just doing a lot of stuff. I've been to Brazil, backwards and forwards to Europe all the time. I'm just having a blast. It kind of spiraling into a different kind of career, if you like.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I like about the book, and you mentioned that you had a lot of other industry people give quotes, which I think really helps build the points that you're making, because there's a lot of information in there. Why is it so essential, do you think, that artists that are trying to make a career out of their music get out on the road and tour?
Oh man, there's so many reasons. But before I get into that, can I just say, the reason I list out all of the things I've done, I mean, honestly, I don't give a fuck. But I think it's pertinent to any advice I give that somebody should question the things I've done to make a judgment call as to whether I know what I'm talking about or not.
And I appreciate you saying that, because here at CD Baby, you're dealing with tons of independent artists, and it's always saddens me how many people are out there giving advice that have never played an instrument before, have never tried to do any of the things they're telling bands to do, and leading some of them down the wrong path.
Right. Yeah, it's certainly it's a business for that. And, most bands, the common sense goes out the window, and they'll listen to anybody they think they should, or anybody who expresses an opinion forcefully. So that's why I list out all of that stuff. If I'm, when I'm doing a lecture, there's a whole, 2-minute video of everything I've done, and I usually just kind of fast forward through it or stop it halfway through, So anyway, so that's that out of the way. Why is it important for a band to tour? Well, there are, you might know better than I, how many bands are on MySpace or Facebook or Bandcamp or whatever. Is it 6 million bands?
It's a huge number. I know that here at CD Baby we have over 300,000 active artists, that meaning that, people that are actively promoting their albums at the moment, not necessarily old catalog pieces, but so it's just alone what we deal with is a lot. And I know MySpace has got a ton, and all the others thrown in the mix. It's a big number.
Right. So it just comes down to this. There are all kinds of people out there, people who don't want to start bands, who are just making music in their bedroom, and they convince themselves that they're going to get a soundtrack or something, and that might happen, but that's a much larger group of people than people in active bands, because it's just easier. But when a band goes on the road, there's different segments of reasons why it's important. One is it's instant feedback on your music. It's a great way to get to the next version of your band. I mean, every great band that there is spends years, making horrifying mistakes, coming on stage in horrifying costumes, and then deciding, no, we're not doing that. Or in the case of Gwar, yes, we're doing it. But if you conduct a survey and ask your friends, your girlfriends, your boyfriends, family members, what do you think of these songs? Oh, they're fantastic. Track 7 is great. Track 8, really good. 'Cause everybody's supporting you and trying to be enthusiastic and helpful, because that's the job of family and friends. And so here you are with these 10 amazing, really good, fantastic, much better than last time's songs, and go and play 50 miles from home, and people just go, boo, shut up, get off the stage, you horrible piece of shit, and probably leave the room. And that might seem like a horrible experience. It's actually fantastic. That's honest, 100% true market feedback. Now, you might decide to say, screw all these people in Iowa or wherever you're playing, Eugene, Oregon, they're all wrong and I'm right. And some artists do that, But you might go, wow, we got a good reaction to the first 2 songs, and we've made those we created those in a different way. When we got to the super 11-minute long ballad, that's when everybody left and someone tried to stab the guitarist. That's your subtle signal that the 11-minute ballad is actually shit. So you can go back to your rehearsal room and take that information. You can video yourself and look at what everybody's doing and go, oh my God, I never looked at the bass player, but he's doing like a funky chicken dance. and you can sit down with the bass player and say, if you ever do the funky chicken dance again, I'm going to kill you. or in the case of Gua, do more funky chicken. We're all doing the funky chicken dance in our outfit. Yeah. Like, you can, just like an Olympic athlete, you can look at your performance and fine-tune it. Just like an Olympic athlete will look at their sprint and go, well, if I keep my elbows in, I can shave 0.008 of a second off my 100-meter time. Right? So there's the feedback element of it. There's the idea that the camaraderie of being in a band, not, yay, we're all on the road, but, that's like overnight camp bullshit. But it's when adversity strikes, when you're threatened by 50 angry people because it turns out you're not a country and western band, or that you are a country and western band, when the tires in your van explode, all of these experiences, being pulled over by the cops, having some equipment stolen, having horrifying diarrhea, all of these things pull you together and form these bonds between a band, and it's that chemistry that happens physically that hopefully then translates back into the music and creates this chemistry that's appealing to people who are listening to music, right? So that's this inquantifiable stuff. The other reasons are anybody who pays attention to music respects the act of somebody making the commitment of putting their equipment in a vehicle and traveling however far to perform in a foreign city, right? Even if that is just 50 miles away, where you don't know anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and bloggers, radio people who do the listings in the papers, those people tend to spend a tiny fraction more attention on bands who are actually touring, because if they are, then you can go and see them. They're going to be better at their craft than a band that doesn't tour for the most part. And people are just people. You'll get a chance to meet them and hang out if you like them. So you kind of push yourself not to the front of the line, but you push yourself into the group of bands standing in line that's only 350,000 bands long, not 6 million bands long on MySpace or any of those other horrifying equations.
Yeah, you had a good quote in the book a lot that you said people on the web write about things that happened at shows they went to, not shows they didn't happen or that they couldn't go to. And I thought
like,
that was a good
how many
one.
double negatives does it take to, I mean, and the other part of it is that you get to touch people, and I don't mean that in an old rock and roll sex and drugs sense, although that's true as well. You get to look people in the eye and either bond with them through your music or through chatting with people before or after the show, and make friends with them. And once you do that, then that's a stepping stone you formed in this, in the choppy white waters of the music business or any kind of entrepreneurial activity in this country, in this economy. That's a stepping stone you've just created for yourself, 50 or 60 miles from home. And that's, that's a solid base that you can then go 60 miles away from. You can do the same experiments as you do with your music with T-shirts and other kinds of merchandise. And that's another way to leave a mark. The music dies down, pretty soon after you get off the stage. The smell, hopefully, pretty quickly leaves the room and the hotel room or the basement of the house that you stay in, those kind of ethereal things dissipate very quickly. But if you leave some physical products, whether they're CDs, cassettes, 8-track cartridges, or what you call it, drives, and T-shirts behind, that it memorializes the fact that you were there, and it increases the shelf life of the vibe that you've created, so it's a little tiny bit easier when you go back. And that's the function, other than creating some gas money and helping a band fine-tune the vision of the artistic representation of the band through a T-shirt or through packaging. That's the function of merchandise. So, I advise bands to create the packaging for their own limited-run CDs. And in doing that, they'll make some basic decisions like, should the packaging be shiny? Should it be made out of rusty metal that cuts your fingers when you touch it? Should it be glittery? Should it be smooth and make you want to go to sleep in a bamboo-filled room? I don't know. But you make those decisions about the packaging that works for your band. It's completely covered in cow's blood because we're fucking maniacs. Right. So packaging reinforces the idea of the band, and then you take those images and ideas that you've clarified and apply that back to your identity and the music. And so this process is just ongoing and ongoing. And it's the bands who get out there, I think, that forge their own pathway, that run their own businesses, and they understand. It's only once you get it that you get it. I was running a class yesterday at Madison Media Institute, and there's a guy up there. He was interning for a festival up in Wisconsin, and he listened to 400 bands. Just a fraction of the bands who submitted for this festival, and he learned so much by doing that, by actually being in it. He said he learned, make the first 30 seconds count, because, you can say all you want about, no, I'm gonna listen to every song. I'm a musician. I'm gonna give every band as much of a chance as you can. But after you've listened to 100 bands, it's like, fuck it. If you don't get me in the first 30 seconds, fuck you. How dare you, impose this 11-minute long ballad on me? I'm trying to get through this pile of 400 discs.
With that statement, you've probably convinced some people, okay, I need to step up what I'm doing with getting out beyond my own town and get some touring going. Where do you see most bands going wrong when it comes to planning their first tour?
They're going to tour America! And it's like, I said in the book, and it's ridiculous, and I remember thinking, oh my God, some academics are going to look at this statement and just shred me. America is big. America's big. Bands tour England. The thing about England is you are never more than 40 or 50 miles from the ocean. The country's like 400 miles long by 60 miles wide, And you see these hilarious touring schedules of bands touring England. It's like it's 50 miles to the next gig. It's a joke, But there's a great map in the book, and I don't know what page it's on, and feel free to scan it and stick it up on the thing, wherever you want to do with it. But it just shows out of the top 100 markets in the U.S., all but 15 of them are east of a line drawn from Minneapolis down to Texas. And that's pretty much the eastern third of the country. And so you just look at that map, and I mean, I toured America for 20 years, 30 years now, and I looked at that map, and I'm like, fuck. West of that line is all of the money you're going to spend on gas, not being able to do a show every day because the mileages between shows are so high, exploding transmissions, exploding bass players' underpants from the dubious microwave burrito you bought from the truck stop just outside of Salt Lake City.
I have experienced that with a bass player, by the way.
All right, and so you just strategize, and you go, oh my God, it's tough. I know there's a corridor, there's a touring corridor from Portland down to San Diego, but it's tough. The mileages are hard. If you look at basing yourself in Nashville, Louisville's cheaper than Nashville, so I would choose that. There's a great artistic community there. Then you can tour in a flower petal pattern. go off and do 3 days, come back, as I like to say, in time to fall asleep at your day job first thing Monday morning, and then go out the next weekend. You don't have to go on a 6-week-long tour of America, and that's what bands do, and that's just a huge mistake. Take it in baby steps. Do a few days at a time. If you're going to Cleveland and you don't know anybody, you don't have a single fan in Cleveland, then make friends with 2 other bands and say, hey, we're the biggest band in Portland, or we play to 400 people in Portland. You can play with us if we can play with you when we come to Cleveland, or put up a free mixtape or 4 free songs or a free T-shirt. These ideas aren't crazy when you go on the road. And then look at people downloading the free mixtape or the free songs or emailing you for the free shirt, and go where those people are. Do some market research. There's a band from LA, a hip-hop band called Fess One. They put up a hip-hop remix tape, digital remix tape, obviously. They had 1,200 downloads from Beijing. So they called a promoter in Beijing, booked a show, and guess what? The show went over pretty well because they had 1,200 downloads in Beijing. They didn't have to advertise in the paper. They just sent an email to all of those people. And they used, I think, Bandcamp.com to capture emails. There's lots of slick, easy, cheap solutions to capture email and demographic, geographic information. When you give somebody something for free, you're actually not giving something away for free. You're exchanging it for this valuable information. So for a band in Portland, if you're not doing something like that, maybe you zigzag your way to Miami, But what if all of your fans are actually in Vancouver? You've got to do the research, and you never take your country to war unless you're sure of the outcome. That's Sun Tzu, and he's right. God bless him. Touring is warfare. People die, or people get injured. People lose their affection for their fellow band members or for making music, or they just destroy their credit.
Yeah.
And it's very real and very nasty, and you have to be careful.
I know at one point in the book you talk about people, think, okay, I'm going to go on tour, and no matter where they are in the country, they say, I'm going to hit New York and Chicago and LA and really kill themselves to try and make it to those markets because they think they're hot markets. But in a sense, they're nobodies going to a town of a lot of people, and that the strategy should be going to a place like Boise or someplace like that where it's easier to break in and start building a following outside of your market. Right.
It's big fish, small pond. Nobody in LA cares. I think during my live presentation, I mentioned how many bands are playing each week in New York and each week in LA, and it's over 1,000. Nobody has any money, and they're so expensive. It's so expensive to live there that everybody that might be interested in you is so busy struggling to keep their own shit afloat, they don't have time to come and see you with your shit. It's much better you could use something called the 5-pointed star inward-facing crush, and that's a YouTube video that's up there. It strategizes playing in 5 places around the target city. If you have this fetish where you want to be big in LA or big in New York, God help you, because, as I said, nobody cares. But there are some strategies that can help you build an audience before you go into those cities and play to absolutely nobody. Which is, unless you can give me 10 reasons why you're going to play to somebody, you're going to play to nobody.
Yeah.
And sending out posters and, well, we booked a gig, those aren't reasons that anybody's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And God help you, because if you do get a chance from a club, that believes your bullshit, we're going to be huge and blah, 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 and people don't really believe that anymore. But if somebody does give you a chance, House of Blues Chicago, well, they said they could bring 150 people on a Tuesday night, and you bring 50 people, you'll never play there again.
Mm-hmm.
it's much better to treat this like war, which it is, and strategize and go and play all of the suburbs around Chicago and give people T-shirts and build up a loyal fan base, and then go and play as an opening band at the House of Blues and tell the guy booking the place you think you could bring 100 people and bring 150.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And then they'll be like, holy shit, these guys really delivered. And everybody that's still in business is in business, and he'll remember that you brought 150 people on a Tuesday night when he's got some national act in there and they're not selling many tickets. They're like, well, I should call up that band. They were kind of cool. They didn't pester me all night for beers. Nobody puked in the dressing room or shat in my office. You know, all of this stuff follows you around. Be nice, be humble, and slowly and surely you can get where it is that you think you want to go. And you should think long and hard about where it is you want to go before you start trying to get there.
Yeah, and I think that was a good point you just made about getting the opportunity for opening for like a larger touring act. I don't think a lot of artists realize that, club bookers, they'll book these shows and then they'll be monitoring ticket sales, and if it's not, this bigger act isn't doing well, they'll start thinking, how can I, what do I have in my arsenal to make sure this show is well attended? And if you're a band that's been able to deliver in the past, they'll give you the chance.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, if you take a few steps back from just wanting to play every week in your local market, if you take a few steps back, it's really fucking easy. I talk to kids. I mentioned a club up in Rochester called the Water Street Music Hall. I like the club. The owner of the club did the piece about potato soup in the book. I really like him, and I like the club. But every time I go there, it's always icy and snowy, and the load-in is difficult and dangerous. Well, if I was a band in Rochester, I wouldn't keep banging on the front door going, here's our new demo, we've tweaked the guitar and we've added xylophone. Nobody gives a fuck. I'd be round the back. I'd be watching the weather, and I'd be round the back every day, especially when I know there's a national touring band. 10 in the morning, I'd be clearing all the snow and ice off the back steps and salting it, and I'd put a little sign on the back door. Once again, the guys in this band have cleared all the snow and shit away, so blah, blah, courtesy of blah, blah, blah. And that's an email address or a phone number. And, the first time people were like, what the fuck? Somebody might call you up or put you on the guest list. After you do that 10 or 20 times, you can start to call the shots because you're dealing with people who would have to clear the snow and crap off of those back steps if you didn't, or injure themselves in the cold. That you can gouge for yourself the opportunities that you want. But you're not going to get them by adding sitar and trumpets to track 4 to try and impress somebody. That, we're assuming that the music's pretty good. Mm-hmm. You've got to go outside of that to get somebody's attention.
Well, besides good music, what are some skills that you think would be beneficial for bands or artists to learn or have in their arsenal of promotion tools in order to make their live show and touring more successful?
Well, there's a lot of stuff. Just some basic online skills. Communicating. But I'd go back before that and say, if I was putting a band together of 4 or 5 people, my ad wouldn't say bass player that sounds like this guy, that with good equipment required. It would say bass player who can edit video and maintain the engine of a blah, 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 required for a band. Because we've got a drummer who can screen print, we've got a singer who can do interviews and handle the social media aspect, we've got, a guitarist who can do posters, has his own small recording setup. We need the bass player mechanic video editing slot filled. If everybody in the band multitasks, then you bring something really dangerous to the table. So any skill really is useful. You need another 5 skills on top of just being good enough at your instrument. There's a lot of schools and a lot of bullshit to help you be better and better and better at your instrument. And I think the fact is, if you're fantastic at your instrument but you don't possess 3 or 4 or 5 other skills, you're going nowhere. The guy who is okay, good enough at his instrument with 5 other skills is going to go further than you are. Not many people will tell you that, because having people get better at playing their instruments is a huge business in this country and in Europe, and there are some schools I'm not allowed to speak at anymore. Because I fucking tell it like it is. They still allow me to talk at Drum Tech in London. I actually love the place. I'm talking to 100 kids there. I'm like, hey, how many drummers? And 48 people put their hands up. I'm like, what are you going to do? Like, I'm going to be a session drummer. I'm like, no, you're fucking not. There's 48 other drummers in this room, and me, and Ringo Starr's still alive and maybe still doing sessions. Fucking, this actually was an opportunity for you to bring cupcakes for everybody and poison 47 other drummers, and you missed that opportunity. Unless if you're still thinking you're going to get a job as a session drummer anywhere in the world, you're out of your fucking mind, I've forgotten your question, but you need all of these skills, and a band that has them, that divides this huge amount of tasks up, will succeed. I mean, they will. And a band that just makes good music is just fucked.
Well, we like it when people tell it like it is on the podcast. So that's I'm sure some tough things for some people to hear, but we say stuff like that quite often, where it's it's a tough pill to swallow. But if you're going to have any success, you need to know where you're working from, and that makes it easier for the people that really want to succeed to figure out how to get there.
But you know what I really liked. There's that movie called Cinderella Man, and I've forgotten the name of the boxer. It's that Australian guy. It's a true story of a boxer, and he's fighting at the time of the Great Depression, and I think he's getting ill or something, and he says, "Look, at least when I'm in the ring, I can see the thing that I need to fight." And the problem for a lot of bands is they're so trapped in the past, trapped by their own 15 pairs of rose-colored spectacles, or just besieged with buckets of bullshit from other people. They don't know who they're fighting. They don't know what the fight is. The truth is, if you divide this stuff up into easily accomplishable, manageable tasks, it's really fucking easy. Mm-hmm. I say this all the time. How do we put 20,000 people in a stadium? And people are like, oh fuck, and you can see them getting ready with their pencils. Here we go. This is going to be the hot tip. And I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't know how to put 20,000 people in a stadium. Right? But I saw U2 play to 17 people. So I know there's a pathway. If you're thinking about, how can I put 20,000 people in the stadium? How can I do that? You're going to ignore or tread on the feet or elbow in the face the 2 people sitting in the corner who could be your first 2 fans. Mm-hmm. Because if you're aimed at 20,000 people, 2 people asking you for an autograph, fuck off. I need 20,000 people. Stop bothering me, you potential fans that like me. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yep.
But if you make friends with those 2 people, and people are like, well, fuck, we could do that. Of course we could. Well, great. Just do that 998 more times, and that's 20,000 fans. And it's so easy. You just learn how to do it, and you keep doing it. And you need to remember that people who became fans 6 months ago, are bored, have died, had children, or moved to another country, or found another band to like, unless you stay in contact with them. And you can't just make one album. You've got to have a live album, the DVD of your trip to the hospital, or an acoustic set down by the riverbank, or a fake live German album. You've got to keep feeding people stuff to keep the people who got into you 6 months ago interested. You know, it's great that you just played to 20 new people in Cleveland and they like you. They're discovering you for the first time. But people from 6 months ago still need they need a physical, a metaphorical, or a digital postcard from you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an enormous task, but it isn't really. It's lots and lots of little tasks. And anybody can do it. And the wonderful thing about the stuff that you guys are doing, that this whole new digital world opens up. It's fucking punk rock. It's 1976 all over again, you know. And there are no barriers to entry, which is also a problem. It's another reason you need to go on a road. When I was a kid, the barrier to entry of releasing your own record was you had to have enough money to have 500 to 1,000 singles or 12 inches or albums pressed onto vinyl, you know, and that had a certain cost. So you either had to get jobs and save up the money, or someone had to get injured in a car accident, whatever. Now anybody can do this. It's fantastic. The playing field is level, and that is both the best part of the news and the worst part of the news. That's why you need to get out on the road and meet the people and give them a reason to go online and check you out and download some new songs and keep in touch with you and just build it.
Do you have any final thoughts or words of advice before we go?
There's so many great tools out there that it's unbelievable to me. You scratch below the surface of YouTube and like, oh, here's all this information about people in Norway watching this video 9 days ago. What the fuck? It's like Mission Impossible. And, you know, I'm 50 years old, and I go and talk to students all over the world, and I used to kind of say, well, has anybody looked into their account for the details on their YouTube account? People go, oh, no, you press the Insight button. And maybe one or two people will go, oh, yeah, I pressed the Insight button. And then you press the Hotspots button, and it gives you a graph of people kind of drifting away, bailing on your video. So you can use that information to go, wow, it's probably really boring every time Martin's looking at the camera going, here's another tip, you know. But when I'm with some suicide girls, like, fucking hell, miraculously people pay attention. So you can apply that information and make more videos with suicide girls and less videos of me talking to a camera. You know, there are all these little tiny bits of information you can accumulate and so many free tools to help you do that. It's unbelievable. And so many bands are like, what is that again? You know, and never mind scratching below the surface of YouTube. Look at Tube Mogul. That's a way to upload your videos to like 50 sites by pressing one button. I mean, there are some really fantastic tools, and then there are bunches of other tools that will absolutely fuck you. I just saw something today from The Guardian in England. You know, $87 for 1,000 friends on Facebook. You know, so which is just disgusting, and it's so lame that bands are so desperate, perhaps.
Yeah.
That they'll buy friends on Facebook, because if you follow that through, you follow that story, that gets you the gig, the opening slot at the House of Blues. But you know, it's difficult to get real friends on Facebook to actually leave the house, park a car, get a ride, pay for parking, you know, have a wash, and show up. It's fucking impossible to get a fake friend on Facebook to do anything. So, you know, if you use that to get a gig at the House of Blues, well, the game's going to be up. And you're going to shit the bed once again. It's there aren't any shortcuts, which is, I think, a very important other thing that bands need to understand. There are things that will help you, Like, instead of uploading your video one at a time to 50 different sites, TubeMogul will do it. You press one button. That's real material help that allows you to be more productive. There are great tools and products from PreSonus that allow you to express yourself and do things very quickly. But there are a bunch of products out there that just create smoke screens and piles of shit that are meaningless and quite detrimental. Even before it gets to a potential opening slot at House of Blues, the damage has been done, because when you see 3,000 extra fans on Facebook, maybe you relax a little bit, and then you're done for.
Yeah.
Because the all of these tasks that we talk about, they're not rocket science. It just takes a lot of time. It takes every single person in the band committing to working on this stuff to turn it around, and any band can do it. You know, I should say any band can get to where they should be. Mm-hmm. You know, if your band is called Cunt, 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 and you write songs about beheading religious people, you know, well, yeah, you're going to get to your audience of 5 pretty quickly, you know. But at least you'll find that ceiling. You'll find that even by using all the tricks in Toastmart, you know, with 5 different T-shirt designs, you've reached that ceiling, you know. Oh my God, actually, you might be huge. But for a band that's growing, that applies and continually grows and experiments with their music and their shirt designs and stays busy and listens to their fans and talks to their fans, and does things outside of music with their fans, the sky's the limit, really. And I used to tell bands a lot, you don't need a deal. Well, the problem with that, and I don't, maybe you guys told bands that too, you know, because you don't need a deal. The truth is, you haven't needed a fucking deal since 1976 when punk rock happened, you know. People will tell me, well, we don't need a label, Martin, speaking to me as a label owner. And I'm like, don't tell me you don't need a label. Nobody needs a label. That's why I started my label, because I didn't need a label, you know. But bands still, another thing that perhaps holds them back, bands still need, I think, many of them, that validation of, you know, it's like, well, what happens after the engagement? Well, the wedding, and then someone gets shagged, and then there's a baby and a divorce, and things get horrible, you know. And for bands, you know, what happens after we do some gigs and release our own demos? Well, we sign to a label. And rather than tell bands they don't need to do that anymore because then they turn off their brains, I just tell bands to run their own business. Because if you want to sign to a label, then that label is going to want to see 5,000 to 10,000 sales of CDs, 8-track cartridges, cassettes, whatever, that you've done on your own, and they're going to want to see 20,000 real fans that exist, and they're going to want to see 2 or 3 years of solid touring for them to make an investment, a meaningful investment in your band. But the fact is, if you're running your business and you do those things, you're just not going to want to sign to a label, because you'll see you could sell 100 CDs and make more money than if you sold 1,000 CDs through a label. Yeah. You know, you start to run your business and understand that you want a spread of merchandise. You want 20 different fucking T-shirts. I tell bands you have to have at least 2, because if I told them they needed 20, they'd just freak out and jump off a bridge. But 20, you know, how many shirts is too many? Well, you know, keep introducing them and track your figures. Make them yourself. Make 5 at a time. And if those sell out, make more. If they don't sell, don't make any more. It's not a waste of time. You just found out that the name of your band, Come, in red on a white doctor's outfit was a bad idea, but you only made 5 of them. You know, you didn't make 200. Experiment, and you'll get where you need to go. And as I said, you track all your numbers, which you'll need to do for that pie-in-the-sky label deal, and you'll pretty soon see if you sell 5,000 CDs or the equivalent, download cards, whatever, on your own, the money that you make from that goes straight back into the band immediately. And by doing a deal, you're going to get no money. You'll have other people making decisions for you. And the fact is, nobody is more qualified than the members of a band, except in the studio when you need a producer to have a different viewpoint and advise you most of the time. But nobody's more qualified than the members of the band to know that they do well at the fetish rubberware, all-you-can-drink Jägermeister Thursday night, explosion nights, and they're not going to do well at the Monday night football, all-you-can-drink yeehaw, college, someone's going to get hurt night.
Yeah.
And agents don't know that stuff. Labels don't know that stuff. And once you introduce more people into the equation, you introduce other opinions and compromise and other people's priorities. And those are not necessarily your priorities. So I think for the first 1 to 5 years of a band, just do it yourself. Do everything yourself. There's lots of places you can go for help. I've never seen so much help as there is on the internet. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's good advice to end on. Thanks, Martin, for taking time out of your day to be on the show. I'll put links to Martin's book in the show notes at cdbabypodcast.com. If you're planning on booking a tour soon, I highly recommend this book. In fact, it's the only book on touring I've seen that I would recommend. No matter what experience level you're at, it has enormous amount of tips, tricks, and advice for touring effectively and not going broke doing it. Also, if you'd like to weigh in on this episode or any previous episode, we'd love to play or read your feedback on the next show. It'd be cool to get some touring advice or horror stories or mistake stories from our listening audience. Those are always fun to share. You can give us your feedback by calling 206-426-5683 or emailing info@cdbabypodcast.com. And you can also leave a comment on the show notes at cdbabypodcast.com. Well, we look forward to hearing from you, and should be some interesting tour stories, so feel free to share. And that's going to do it, so we'll catch you next time. Bye. You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.